In the vastness of deep space, an ancient fleet of warships drifted. These ships, older than any known civilization, had been hidden in the shadows of a dying star for millennia. No one knew they existed, not even the most powerful alien empires. But all that was about to change. The Zalorians, a proud and ruthless alien species, had spent centuries expanding their empire across the galaxy. They believed they were the most advanced species in the universe. They had conquered hundreds of worlds and defeated countless civilizations, but when they discovered an unusual energy signature in the distant reaches of space, they never expected what they would find. Captain Zar, the leader of the Zalorian scouting mission, stared at the dark screen in disbelief. The energy signal was weak but unmistakable. Something ancient was out there. His crew had found old ruins before forgotten ships or destroyed stations, but nothing like this. They decided to investigate. The crew of the Vermilion, a battle-hardened Zalorian cruiser, approached the source of the signal. It was a vast area of empty space, almost eerie in its silence. For days, nothing happened. No signs of life, no movement, just empty darkness. Then, out of nowhere, a massive structure appeared on the edge of their sensors. At first, they thought it was just an asteroid or space debris. But as they got closer, they saw the truth. It was a fleet, hundreds of ships, all floating in perfect formation. But these ships were unlike anything the Zalorians had ever seen. They were enormous, sleek, and strangely elegant, with designs that seemed to defy logic. "They can't be this old," muttered Zar under his breath. The fleet had the look of something from a forgotten era, but the technology was undeniably advanced. The hulls of the ships glistened in the dim light of the distant star, untouched by time or damage. The alien crew was amazed. For a moment, they were silent, unsure of what to do. A fleet this powerful should have been destroyed long ago, yet it was here waiting. Zar gave a low chuckle. "It's just a relic," he said. "Maybe the humans left it behind." His words seemed to mock the situation, but there was unease in his voice. The crew began their investigation. They boarded one of the ships, an enormous cruiser that dwarfed their own vessel. The doors hissed open, and a strange chill filled the air. The ship seemed alive, as if it was waiting for something. The Zalorians spread out, exploring the dark, vast hallways. Inside, everything was pristine. The interior was as if it had been frozen in time. The walls were covered in symbols and designs that no one recognized. The ship's control center was in perfect working condition, as though the fleet had just been abandoned yesterday. But then something strange happened. The lights flickered on, and the hum of the ship's power systems came to life. The crew froze. The ship hadn't been powered for centuries, yet now it was fully awake. Zar's heart raced. "What is happening?" One of the crew members whispered. "It's human technology," Zar said, eyes wide. This was built by humans. The realization hit them all at once. The fleet wasn't a relic from some forgotten species. It was human. The very same humans they had written off as insignificant, a race they thought had been wiped out long ago, had built this incredible fleet. And now that fleet was waking up. The crew quickly realized that the fleet wasn't simply a collection of ships. It was a weapon, and not just any weapon. These ships had capabilities far beyond what the Zalorians had ever imagined. Some of the ships were equipped with weapons that could decimate entire star systems. Others had stealth technology that made them invisible to any sensors. The discovery was both thrilling and terrifying. The Zalorians had never known that humanity could have been so advanced. The ships were in perfect working order, and their power seemed to grow with each passing moment. They hadn't just been forgotten, they had been hidden, waiting for the moment when they would return. But why? Why had humans built such a fleet and then left it behind? Zar stood frozen, staring at the ship's central console. The display flickered on, showing the fleet's final command, a simple, haunting message, awaiting command. The crew knew what that meant. This fleet had been built for a purpose. It had been left behind, waiting for the right time to return. And now, the fleet was awake. It was ready. The Zalorians were no longer laughing. They had underestimated humanity. They thought they were the galaxy's masters, but now they were facing the terrifying truth. Humans had left behind a legacy far stronger than anyone had imagined. As the fleet slowly powered up, Tsar made a decision. We need to get back to the Empire. We need to warn them. Humanity is not gone. They've just been waiting. But it was too late. The ships began to move. The forgotten fleet had awakened, and it was no longer a forgotten relic. It was a force to be reckoned with. The galaxy was vast, and for centuries, the Valorians, a powerful alien race, had ruled over its many stars. They were known for their military might, their advanced technology, and their belief that they were the strongest species in the universe. They had conquered hundreds of worlds, defeated countless enemies, and believed that no one could ever stand against them. But in the far reaches of space, something was about to challenge everything they thought they knew. One day, an expedition was sent to investigate a strange signal coming from a remote area of space, far from the Valorian borders. It was weak, barely a whisper in the void, but the Valorians didn't ignore it. Captain Kale, a seasoned veteran, was tasked with leading the mission. Probably just another dead station or an old derelict, Kale said with a smirk as the Talon, his ship, moved closer to the source of the signal. I bet it's a forgotten wreck, nothing more. The crew, all hardened soldiers, shared the same view. To them, exploring these old, abandoned corners of space was just another boring job. After all, they had seen countless ruins of long-lost civilizations. Most were nothing but empty husks, worthless, silent relics of species that had failed to survive. But as they approached, something didn't feel right. The signal grew stronger, and soon they could see it. The ships were enormous, their designs sleek yet unfamiliar. They were covered in layers of dust, their hulls damaged in places, but they were far from the scrap heaps the crew had expected. They look ancient, one of the crew members muttered. No way any species today could have built something like this. Kale frowned. It's a joke. They're just leftovers from a species that didn't last. We'll salvage what we can and move on. But as the crew boarded one of the ships, their laughter quickly faded. The ship was nothing like they expected. Inside, the walls were covered in strange symbols, and the corridors stretched far beyond what should have been possible for a ship of its size. The technology inside was unlike anything they had ever seen. It was advanced, so advanced, that even the Valorians had no idea how to operate most of the systems. This is impossible, Kyle whispered, staring at the ship's central console. Who could have built this? The ship seemed to hum with life, as though it was waking up. Lights flickered on, and the hum of energy filled the air. It wasn't just a forgotten wreck. This ship, along with the entire fleet, had been waiting. But for what? The crew began to explore more, moving from one ship to another. Each ship was the same, massive, ancient, and filled with technology that was more powerful than anything the Valorians had ever encountered. There were weapons that could obliterate entire planets, stealth systems that made the ships invisible to all known sensors, and engines that could travel faster than light without any visible means of propulsion. This is a trap, Kale muttered, his voice suddenly tense. These ships were built by someone far beyond us. We've underestimated them. At first, the crew had thought the ships were merely relics, nothing more than the remnants of an old, forgotten civilization. But now, they realized the truth. These ships were not ancient in the way they had believed. They were waiting for the right moment to come to life once more. And then, the terrifying realization hit. The ships weren't just built by any race. They were human ships. The markings, the technology, it all pointed to one truth. Humans had built this fleet. The crew couldn't believe it. The humans, a species thought to have been wiped out, had built an armada that could rival any in the galaxy. But why had they disappeared? Why had they hidden such power away for so long? We have to report this back to the Empire, Kyle said, his voice shaky. The humans, whatever happened to them, have left behind something far more dangerous than we ever imagined. The ships, once considered nothing more than forgotten relics, were now a threat. As the Valorians explored the fleet, they realized they had made a deadly mistake. They had mocked these ships, thinking they were nothing, but now they understood their true power. The fleet was awakening, and with it, a dangerous power that could change the balance of the galaxy forever. The crew of the Talon scrambled to return to their ship, but it was too late. The ancient ships began to power up, their engines roaring to life. The fleet was no longer dormant, it was alive, ready to move. And the Valorians had no idea what they had just unleashed. "We have to get out of here," one of the crew shouted as the ships began to align, their weapons charging. The Valorians had never seen anything like it. Kale's heart raced as he turned to his crew. "Get back to the ship. Now." And now, the galaxy would have to face the consequences. The ancient ships that had been mocked were no longer a forgotten relic. They were a new force, a powerful threat that would make even the mighty Valorians tremble in fear. The galaxy was filled with stars, planets, and mysteries, many of which were long forgotten. Most races in the galaxy had their own stories and legends, but none could compare to the ones surrounding a forgotten fleet that had been drifting in the outer reaches of space for centuries. The Exathorians, a race known for their advanced technology and military power, had been exploring space for centuries. They believed they knew everything about the universe except for one thing. They had never heard of the fleet, not until they picked up the faintest signal from the farthest corner of the galaxy. Captain Jorik, the leader of the Exathorian fleet, had seen many strange things in his long career, but this one was different. His crew had detected an ancient signal, something old but still active, coming from the edge of their territory. At first, Jorik thought it was a glitch, some old data from a forgotten mission. But the signal continued to pulse weak, but unmistakable. Something was out there. "We'll investigate," Jorik ordered, his voice calm but his eyes sharp. "Prepare the fleet. We leave at once." The Exathorian fleet, a powerful armada of warships, moved into the unknown region of space. For days, they searched, but the signal was weak and nothing seemed to be there. The stars in this part of space were distant, and the area appeared empty. Then, out of nowhere, a massive shadow appeared on their sensors. At first, the crew thought it was a mistake. But as they got closer, the size of the object became clearer. It wasn't an asteroid or a destroyed station, it was a fleet. A huge fleet, its ships as massive as mountains, each one sitting perfectly still in space, as if they were waiting for something. The sight was both awe-inspiring and eerie. The ships had been here for so long, untouched by time. "Is this real?" one of the crew members whispered. Jorik's mind raced. There was something strange about the fleet. The ships were old, far older than anything the Exathorians had ever encountered. The markings on the hulls were unfamiliar. The design of the ships was unlike anything they had ever seen. They appeared abandoned, yet the faint energy signal was still there, pulsing slowly. "These ships are ancient," Jorik said quietly. "But who could have built them?" The crew boarded one of the ships, their weapons ready. The interior was cold and dark, but the moment they stepped inside, they were hit with a sense of something unnatural. It was as though the ship had been frozen in time, untouched by the passage of centuries. The walls were covered in symbols, and the technology was unlike anything they could understand. It seemed both advanced and simple at the same time, as if it had been made to last for eternity. "What happened to them?" Jorik wondered aloud, his voice filled with curiosity and unease. The silence of the ship was unsettling. Everything seemed to be in perfect condition, but the crew could find no signs of life. As they explored deeper into the ship, they found strange, empty chambers. There were no bodies, no crew members. It was as if the fleet had been abandoned, left behind for some unknown reason. Then, suddenly, something happened. The lights flickered on, and the ship began to hum softly. The crew stood frozen. They had expected this ship to be dead, a lifeless relic. But now it was coming to life. The signal that had drawn them here was getting stronger. The ship was waking up. Jorik's eyes widened in shock. "This is not just an old fleet," he murmured. "It's still alive." They were waiting for something. The crew quickly moved to the central command area, hoping to find answers. As they approached, the ship's central console flickered on, showing a single message, awaiting command, Humans, Jorek whispered, the realization hitting him like a blow to the chest. The markings on the ships, the strange technology, it all pointed to one thing. The fleet had been built by humans, an ancient human fleet. But why had they built it? Why had they abandoned it? And most importantly, why was it waiting? Jorek's mind raced. Humans had been thought to be extinct, wiped out in a war centuries ago. The Exothorians had long believed they were nothing but a myth, a species that had failed to survive. But here it was their legacy. An entire fleet, waiting, dormant, hidden away for all these years. The crew rushed back to their ship, but it was clear that they weren't alone anymore. The other ships in the fleet were beginning to wake up as well. Their lights flickered on, and their engines hummed to life. The fleet was moving. Jorek stared out at the ships, their massive forms now slowly beginning to align with his own fleet. The once silent giants of the past were no longer dormant. They were alive, and they were about to rise. "What should we do?" one of the crew members asked, fear creeping into their voice. "We wait," Jorek replied, his voice tense. "We don't know who these ships were built for, why they were hidden. But they are not a forgotten fleet anymore. We have to be careful. We have no idea what we're dealing with." As the fleet of ancient ships slowly powered up, the Exothorian fleet watched in silence. The past had awakened, and with it, a force more powerful than they had ever imagined. The silent giants of the past had returned, and nothing would ever be the same again. For centuries, humanity had been thought of as nothing more than a footnote in the grand history of the galaxy. Most species in the universe believed that mankind had vanished, their civilization lost to time and conflict. Yet, deep in the farthest corners of space, a secret was waiting to be uncovered, one that would change everything. The Dracarians, a highly intelligent alien race, had dominated the galaxy for thousands of years. Their empire was vast, stretching across countless worlds, and their technology was beyond the reach of any other species. They had conquered everything in their path except one. There were rumors of a human fleet, a legacy left behind by a forgotten race, but no one believed it. Humans were nothing but a myth. Captain Velra, a brilliant but ambitious leader of the Dracaran fleet, was known for her curiosity and drive. She had heard the stories, just like everyone else, but she had never given them much thought. However, when her ship, the Vindicator, received an unusual signal from the distant, unexplored sector of space, everything changed. "This could be the lead we've been waiting for," Velra muttered to herself, her eyes scanning the readings. The signal was faint but unmistakable, something ancient, something powerful. A relic of the past? Or something more? Without hesitation, she ordered her fleet to prepare for a journey into the unknown. The sector was dangerous, filled with anomalies and uncharted dangers, but the promise of uncovering something long forgotten was too tempting to resist. The Dracarians set course, and for days they traveled into the uncharted void. The deeper they went, the more intense the signal became. The vast nothingness of space was soon replaced by the unmistakable shape of a massive structure, floating silently in the blackness. At first, Velra thought it was just another abandoned station, but as they approached, she could see it was something far more significant. It was a fleet of ships, each one larger and more imposing than anything the Dracarians had ever seen. They were massive, with sleek lines and technology that was beyond anything the Dracarians could comprehend. These ships had been waiting, dormant for centuries, hidden from the eyes of the galaxy. "What is this?" Velra whispered, her voice filled with awe and disbelief. These ships were not from any known species, at least not from anything the Dracarians had encountered. "Are they abandoned?" one of her officers asked, but Velra shook her head. "These ships are alive. They're waiting." "But for what?" The Dracarians boarded one of the ships, their weapons drawn and their minds alert. As they explored the interior, they found that the ship was like no other they had ever encountered. The walls were adorned with strange symbols, and the technology was both ancient and advanced, unlike anything the Dracarians had ever seen. It was as if the ship had been built by a race far beyond their own. "This is impossible," Velra said, touching the control panel. "How could humans have built this?" It didn't make sense. The humans, thought to be long gone, had created a fleet of such power and sophistication. The more the Drakkarians investigated, the more they realized how dangerous this discovery was. These ships weren't just ancient, they were weapons, designed for war on a scale unimaginable to any species alive today. Velra's heart raced. The fleet wasn't abandoned, it was waiting for something or someone. But why had it been hidden? Why had it been left to drift in the void for so long? As they explored deeper into the ship, they discovered a hidden chamber. Inside, they found a message, written in a language no one could understand. But as they analyzed it, the meaning became clear. The message was simple: we have not forgotten. We are waiting for the chosen? Velra repeated, her voice filled with confusion. Who are they waiting for? The answer came slowly, like a chill running down their spines. The ships were not meant to be forgotten. They were meant to be hidden. The fleet had been designed by humanity, and now it was waiting for the right moment to awaken, waiting for the right people to come and claim it.as. The crew continued to explore the ships. They found that they were not just ships, they were a part of something much larger. The fleet was a legacy, a hidden weapon left behind by humanity to ensure that their civilization would never truly be wiped out. These ships were waiting, not just for any race, but for the one who would awaken them, the humans. But there was no sign of any humans. Had they all been wiped out? Had they disappeared without a trace, leaving behind their greatest creation? Or had they simply gone into hiding, waiting for the right time to return? Velra's thoughts raced. The fleet was more powerful than anything the Drakkarians had ever encountered. It was clear now that they had underestimated humanity. What they thought was a weak, fading species had left behind something far stronger, something that would change the course of the galaxy forever. This is no longer a mystery, Velra said, turning to her crew. It's a warning. As the ships of the fleet powered up, their lights flickering to life, Velra knew one thing for certain: the legacy of humanity had not been forgotten. And now, the galaxy would have to face the consequences. For as long as anyone could remember, the galaxy had moved on without a trace of humanity. Ancient records spoke of a species that once roamed the stars, humans who had disappeared without a trace, wiped out by a war long ago. Yet, one fateful day, that history would be challenged. The Sinter Dominion, a powerful alien empire that controlled much of the galaxy, was known for its ruthless efficiency and technological superiority. It had conquered countless planets and wiped out every species that dared to oppose it. But the Dominion's leadership, led by Commander Varen, had grown complacent. They believed there were no more threats, no more surprises waiting in the darkness. That was until the signal came. Commander Varen stood before his council of generals, the silence of space pressing in on them. The signal was faint but persistent, coming from the forgotten edges of the galaxy. It wasn't a distress call or a warning, just a strange, repeating message that seemed almost ancient. "We have no time for ghost stories," one of the generals scoffed. "This is a waste of resources. There's nothing out there." But Varen couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The signal had an old, unmistakable quality to it, like a whisper from the past. It tugged at his instincts. Something in him knew this wasn't just a random anomaly. "We're going," Varen ordered. "Prepare the fleet." As the Sinter fleet moved toward the source of the signal, the crew remained skeptical. They were seasoned warriors, accustomed to facing all manner of challenges. But the further they traveled into the distant, unexplored region, the more uneasy the crew felt. The stars here were dimmer, the silence deeper. It felt like they were entering a forgotten realm, far from the rest of the galaxy. Then, just as the signal grew stronger, they found it, an immense fleet, floating in space, as if frozen in time. The ships were huge, far larger than anything the Sinter fleet had ever encountered. They were old, their surfaces covered in layers of dust and decay, but still intact. And there was something about them that felt alive, like they were waiting. "What is this?" one of the officers whispered in disbelief. Varen studied the scene in front of him, his mind racing. The ships were beyond anything the Dominion had ever seen, huge, intricate designs, with technology that seemed both advanced and primitive at the same time. But there was one thing that stood out above all else: these ships were human-made. They can't be, Varen muttered. Humans were destroyed centuries ago. This doesn't make sense. The Center Fleet sent a team of soldiers aboard the nearest ship, ready to investigate. As they entered the massive vessel, they were met with an eerie silence. The walls were covered in strange symbols and markings, some of which they couldn't even begin to decipher. But it was the technology that left them speechless. The ship's systems were dormant but intact. If activated, they could easily outmatch anything the Center Dominion had ever built. This doesn't make sense, one of the soldiers said. These ships should be long gone. How are they still here? But there were no answers. The interior of the ships was a ghostly reminder of a long-lost civilization with no signs of life. Yet, the more the Center crew explored, the more they began to realize the truth. This fleet had never been forgotten. It had been waiting, dormant, until the right moment. Back on the Obsidian, Varen sat in his command chair, his mind racing. The fleet of ships had been hidden, lost to time, but not destroyed. The humans had built them, but why? What had happened to the humans? And why did this fleet feel like it was waiting for someone waiting for something? Suddenly, a low hum vibrated through the ship. The lights flickered, and the systems began to come online. One by one, the other ships in the fleet started to awaken, their ancient engines sputtering to life. The long-forgotten warships began to move, slowly at first, but with growing speed. "They're coming to life," Varen said, his voice filled with awe and fear. "This is impossible. These ships, they were never meant to be forgotten." The crew scrambled, trying to make sense of what was happening. The ships began to align, moving together like a sleeping giant awakening. The Center Fleet was now facing a force that they had not prepared for, a fleet of ships more powerful than anything they had ever encountered, a fleet that had been waiting for the right moment to rise. But what was even more disturbing was the realization that this fleet wasn't just a relic of a forgotten race. It was a reminder that humans had built something far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. They had built a fleet that had survived the centuries, that had waited for the right time to awaken. But why had it been hidden for so long? "Get the fleet ready," Varen ordered, his voice tense. "We need to leave. Now." But as the Center Fleet turned to retreat, they found that it was too late. The ancient ships moved faster, more powerfully than they could have imagined. They weren't here to be forgotten any longer. The fleet had awakened, and it was ready to reclaim the galaxy. The Center Fleet, once so confident in its superiority, now found itself outmatched by the long-lost legacy of humanity. The ships moved with a purpose, and the galaxy would soon understand that the humans had never truly been forgotten. Their legacy, though dormant for centuries, was now a force that could change everything.